Hi everybody, welcome to the garage. My phone just went off. Oh, I see. Okay, John Auden sent me a message. John Auden came on my show on Friday, the Court of Public Opinion, jeremycordeaux.com, around the dining room table, live streaming for 3 hours. John Auden has probably the biggest collection of records and CDs, certainly in Australia, possibly in the world. Well, certainly one of the biggest collections in the world. And he keeps in touch with me, and he let me know. And if you are looking for, well, buying or selling vinyl or CDs, he will be at the Walkerville RSL this coming Saturday and Sunday with thousands and thousands of records. So you can browse around and you can choose, you can select. A lot of people get into records, particularly the vinyl records, because of the album covers. And it's becoming quite an art genre, the kind of effort and talent that goes into creating attractive covers for records, vinyl records. It's quite amazing, very collectible. Anyway, that's this coming Saturday at the RSL, Walkerville RSL. On a less happy note, an elderly woman was attacked last Saturday morning here in Adelaide. A kid, alone apparently, roaming the streets, looking for an unlocked car, maybe, or an unlocked door. 3 o'clock in the morning. Police got him. The alleged criminal is only 14 years old. Arrested, in fact, in the presence of Channel 7 cameras. They must monitor, the TV stations must monitor the police radio. I don't know if that's strictly legal or the police look the other way. I don't know how that all happens, but they certainly caught it on Channel 7 cameras. Now, I don't care if this alleged thug is black or white or pink with blue spots, but the media should be able to report the facts. I don't know this boy's background, but if he is Aboriginal, it's going to fire up the debate again. There are too many Aboriginals in jail. We must do something. Well, it could be, you know, quite honestly, that there are too many Aboriginals breaking the law. The answer is simple. Obey the law. Stay at home. Don't be out there in harm's way at 3 o'clock in the morning. My mother used to tell me nothing good happens after midnight. Although I think her version of it was nothing good happens after 10 o'clock in the evening. Yeah, well, I don't know. But if you do go out there and you break the law, you've got to suffer the consequences. The other big issue is that the kids are arrested and seem to be out on bail almost immediately. And the number of people who offend while on bail, that must be looked at, surely. There's a new, speaking of Aboriginals, there's a new Aboriginal tourism department that they are talking about. Now, that's not what they need. It's another waste of public money. Don't they understand? $42 billion is given to Aboriginals along with welfare every year. Their situation has not and will not improve because they simply never see the money. They never get the money. And the government knows this. Adding to the Aboriginal industry will do nothing to help Aboriginal people. And I don't see that the opposition is in any way vocal about this, and certainly the media is not vocal about it. Did mention it to you yesterday. As of last Monday, the 3G network will be switched off, along with a lot of the things that we have been taking for granted, like fire alarms and security, pacemakers, defibrillators. If you're affected in any way, or maybe you think you are, talk to your telco today. Maggie Beer, a wonderful South Australian. She's won a major award. She wins them quite regularly, Maggie Beer. She's won this major award for her innovative aged care cooking. A remarkable South Australian, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations, Maggie Beer, who had a nasty fall going back, I think about a month. But she's on the mend now. I saw a sign the other day. Took my fancy, Pete. It said, "I am so old, I can remember when climate change was called summer, winter, spring and autumn."
I like that.
Yes. Now, while I'm on the subject, I keep getting these calls from energy providers, electricity providers. The latest in a whole long line is Pacific Blue, which I must admit I'd never heard of before. They can give you huge savings on your electricity bills. Really? I said. This is one of those comparison phone calls. You probably get them too. Really, I say. Yes, your current provider is a Chinese company. I was tempted to say, how do you know that? But it was true. My provider is Alinta, with whom I'm not very happy. Then when I check out Pacific Blue, it too is a Chinese company. So what's the point? Here in South Australia, the Chinese own even the poles and wires. The sales pitch seems to be, our power is cheaper and comes from renewables. 100% from renewables. Strange. Cheaper when renewables are 60% more expensive? I think it's hard to think about any of these phone calls as being anything other than lies. You see, they promote renewables. They promote renewables because of the Albanese government subsidies. It's rubbish. Subsidies run out. The cheapest power comes from Australian coal and gas. That's why the most efficient, effective economies in the world buy our resources and use them to benefit their people, to benefit and advantage their people. Then Chinese companies come in to Australia through the back door, or maybe it's even the front door, I don't know, and try to sell us, with taxpayers' help, renewables. If renewables were so good, why wouldn't they be using them themselves? Is our government dumb or just plain crazy? No, I tell you what I think it is. I think it is ideologically driven incompetence. Like The Voice. John Bolton, name might ring a bell, former American National Security Secretary, hates Trump, hates him. I was listening to him the other night. He was broadcasting, there was an interview with him on the BBC. He says that AUKUS will be ditched if Trump wins. Yet all over the states, Trump gathers more and more support. Yes, it'll be close. Others say it'll be a landslide. I don't really know, but God, it's going to be interesting. Joe Rogan and Trump. Now, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm going up to have a look at it tonight. My son Christopher sent it to me. He sat and watched the whole 3 hours. Joe Rogan and Trump. Very entertaining, 3 hours, I'm told. I'll let you know on Friday. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has announced during the week the global war on inflation has been won. Wow. They expect the new year will see inflation at about 2%. Well, that's well within the target for most central banks, and that has got to be good news. Really has to be good news. And predictably, 4 or 5 cuts in interest rates next year. It's often been asked why so many people are showing up these days with food allergies. Are you allergic to anything, Pete?
No.
No, I'm not either. But I know so many people are. Well, my daughter Amber never was as a child allergic to peanuts, but she is allergic to peanuts now. Perhaps we have the answer. Air pollution. We had a most interesting guest last Friday around the dining room table, Professor Peters from Murdoch Children's Institute. And she shed some fascinating light on the connection between air pollution and food allergies. And for some reason, nobody had ever thought to have a look at those two. Next Friday, seeing as I've brought it up, next Friday, Johnny Letts. Well, we've got the Melbourne Cup next week. Johnny Letts is a very interesting guest, champion jockey. He'll join us along with Les Ellicus, Professor Ian Plimer, and Leon Byrne is going to drop past in the last hour. So I hope you might tune in as well. You know those ancestry DNA websites? Have you been tempted to have a look at your ancestral past? I have. I thought it was interesting. It intrigues a lot of people. We all want to know where we came from. Lots of people grab the opportunity to research their past, their ancestors. But what people don't readily know, and nobody seems to make it all that public, police forensics have access to all that DNA. Once you've given it, heck, what a DNA bank to be able to refer to. A wonderful way of tracking people down, particularly people who might not want to be tracked down. Just thinking. I had no idea till the other night that there were so many extroverts in Australia. And I won't say just Australia, I'll say the world. Did you see that photographer? He lined up 5,000 people, 5,000 who were then persuaded to take all their clothes off. 5,000 nude people on a bridge in Brisbane on the weekend. This guy apparently, he roams around the world promoting mass nudity and has no shortage of takers. I just don't... You're a photographer, Pete?
Yes. I don't get it.
No. I can't. How would you possibly get 5,000 people in focus at the same time? You had a focal length with a lens, haven't you?
Oh yes, but he'd be way back with a telephoto, I would think.
Telephoto lens, yeah.
But, you don't have to have such a great depth of field.
You'd really want to be fairly self-confident, wouldn't you?
Yes.
The Institute of Public Affairs have done a very interesting survey on this government's disinformation and misinformation bill, which they're going to try and pass it. With the help of the Greens, they probably have the numbers. This may influence their thinking on the subject. Out of this survey, a lot of people, 5,000 people surveyed, overwhelmingly reject the idea. The general public do not like the idea of a two-tiered system of government control. over what we can say. It really is amazing. How dare they even think that we would accept or embrace such censorship? I don't know what we quite do about it, but as I say, with the help of the Greens, they might get it through. But can you imagine stand-up comics? Comedy is fairly reliant upon offending people. Radio programs and podcasts and pieces like this on Facebook, they'd jump on this from a great height. Oh, you can't say anything that offends people or makes somebody feel uncomfortable. Why not? I mean, we live in an age where people get offended on somebody else's behalf, for God's sake. What a colourless, awful world we would have. Misrepresentation. Medibank has commissioned a study of home care, which I applaud. I think this is a great idea. Home care as opposed to the usual routine in hospitals. And of course the overuse of ERs, emergency rooms. KPMG did the study. They've come back with a very positive finding in favour of home care, with house calls from doctors and nurses, a huge saving, an end to ramping. Now, I think what this means is that things have gone full circle. Home care is how we used to do it. Doctors would make regular home visits. I don't know why we moved away from that. Maybe a quality of life thing for general practitioners. I must ask you, it's kind of funny really, what sort of cars do the Turkish police drive? Any thoughts, Pete?
Well, you did tell me.
I did tell you. Yes, I did tell you. Bentleys, Rolls-Royce, Ferraris, Maseratis. It's perfectly true. These very expensive luxury cars painted up in police livery. Absolutely true. These are cars, not only cars, mind you, but possessions, cars and possessions of criminals that the police have seized and put to good public use. What a great idea. Fantastic idea. How much time have I got, Pete?
Well, a little bit.
A little bit. We've known about these forever chemicals, PFAS in particular. This is retardant. Mind you, we knew about the flammable cladding as well for years and years and years. But PFAS particularly, once in the water supply, is a huge problem. Once in the groundwater, it's a huge problem. Sydney is now contaminated. Sydney water is now contaminated, and little can be done about it. The law of unintended consequences. Something we'll talk about on Friday, maybe if I'm out of time now. Something you might know, that there are between 100 and 140,000 homes in Australia that are empty. No one home. God, that sounds weird. We all hear about the housing shortage, how many people are homeless, etc. Why would somebody land bank, buy a house, keep it empty, not even rented? And remember, for some reason, houses deteriorate pretty quickly without people in them. And if you think 140,000 homes sitting vacant is pretty strange, spare a thought for Japan, where they have approximately 9 million empty homes. We'll talk about that. Let me just quickly remind you about Jimmy Elder. He's wound up yet another auction. This was an online auction. This one that has just gone past the last few days. I think he's got one more before the end of the year, and that is going to be a big one. Not that this wasn't a big one. I mean, this was a huge catalogue of sales, paintings for sale. Just remember, if you have a work of art, notable Australian or international art. You mightn't even know whether it's notable. Your great aunt Jemima maybe left it to you, and it's been sitting somewhere, maybe even on the wall, and you have passing interest in maybe it could be really valuable. If that is your situation, give one of our sponsors, Jim Elder, a ring on 8267. This is an Adelaide number. If you're out of town, put an 08 in front. 8267 2869. Or for more information, you go to info@elderfineart, all one word. When I say that, it's info@elderfineart.com.au. And you'll see bits and pieces about his very recent auction and the upcoming notification of when the next one is going to be, which will be, as I say, before the end of the year. And God knows the end of the year is remarkably close, Pete. Whiz is running out of time. What can I tell you about the day? October 30, happy birthday, if you're having a birthday. Daniel Cooper patents the time clock. The time clock. Is that like a Bundy? You know, you punch a time clock? You go to work and you punch a time clock?
Yes.
Yeah. Daniel Cooper. That was 1894. The time clock. Clarence Birdseye sells his first frozen peas on this day in 1952. Clarence Birdseye. 1938. A radio broadcast of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, narrated by Orson Welles, allegedly causes a mass panic. A great moment in radio history. 1938, October 30, today, was the day. We're all dog people here. This is interesting. 2020, new DNA study of dogs suggests they were humans' first domesticated animal, 11,000 years ago at the end of the Bronze Age. And they've been in our various beds ever since. They're not dumb. They're not dumb. P.T. Barnum's Circus, the greatest show on the earth, debuts in New York City in 1873. Barnes Wallis, what a man he was, English scientist, engineer and inventor. He was the guy who invented the bouncing bomb, making the dam busters possible. He dies at 92 on this day in 1979. Barnes Wallis. Henry Winkler, American actor, Fonz in Happy Days, Night Shift, born New York City, 1945 he was born. Henry Winkler famously said on my program on 5DN many years ago, it was back when he was doing Happy Days. We were talking about some of the projects he had in the pipeline, because he was a very good producer and writer as well as very interesting actor. He said he was going to work till he was fertilizer. He wanted to be useful even when he died, so he was going to work till he was fertilizer. And he still is working, dear Henry Winkler. British model Jean Shrimpton causes a sensation on Derby Day at the Melbourne races wearing a white shift dress. Shock horror, 4 inches above the knee. 1965 was the year. This was the day. Bert Newton, Australian radio, television and stage personality. Good Morning Australia. All the Graham Kennedy shows. And of course a lot of time on Melbourne radio, 3UZ and 3AW and whatnot. Logie award-winning ceremonies, of course. Don Lane, you name it. He dies at 83. 2021. 83, it sounds very young to me. Mind you, I'm approaching 70 from the wrong direction. So of course it's going to sound young. God, it is. Christopher Columbus, Italian or Spanish explorer, navigator who discovered the New World for Spain and initiated European colonization, born in Genoa, at or just before this date, in 1451. Sakichi Toyoda, Japanese inventor and industrialist, Toyota Industries, dies at just 63 on this day in 1930. Walt Disney purchases Lucasfilms Limited and the rights to Star Wars and the Indiana Jones franchise for $4.5 billion. It's not much if you say it quickly. Queen Isabella of Spain bans violence against American Indians, 1503. The Britain and French complete the Channel under the English Channel on this day in 1990. Robert Goulet, American Tony, Grammy award-winning singer, stage and screen actor, Camelot, If Ever I Would Leave You, which was a wonderful song. He dies of pulmonary fibrosis. He was only 73. Golly, the year was 2007. Look, have yourself a wonderful what's left of the week. Pete and I will be back on Facebook Tuesday and Wednesday next week. And we'll see you, hopefully, around the dining room table, jeremycordeaux.com, 9 o'clock on Friday morning, 9 till 12, live streaming. Do join us there in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Peter Clayton and I wish you a very happy what's left of the week. Bye for now.